As we step into the later chapters of life, many of us find ourselves grappling with an invisible shift. The phone rings less often. Our presence in family gatherings feels more symbolic than significant. We become witnesses of our children's busy lives rather than participants. And in that subtle transformation, a question emerges. What is the role of an elder in a world that runs faster every day? Cicero, the Roman philosopher and statesman, once reflected deeply on the art of aging. In his timeless essay De Senectute, On Old Age, he offered not just consolation but a path forward. He saw aging not as a decline, but as a season of harvest, a time to reap the wisdom that youth often overlooks. For Cicero, the power of the elderly was not in their physical strength, but in their moral and intellectual authority. Modern society, however, rarely celebrates this view. Aging is seen as a loss. We are told to fight it, hide it, resist it at all costs. Advertisements sell youth in bottles, and invisibility becomes a silent companion for those over 60. Yet this perspective misses something profound, that the later stages of life are not a descent, but an elevation, an opportunity to live with clarity, with intention, and with dignity. The truth is, power in old age doesn't come from reclaiming youth. It comes from embracing maturity. It comes from letting go of roles we no longer need and reclaiming the essence of who we truly are. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward becoming fully ourselves. As we age, we are invited to stop performing and start being. But here lies the challenge. After decades of giving, raising children, building careers, supporting partners, we often forget how to receive. We forget how to be enough, just as we are. We confuse usefulness with worth. And when we are no longer needed in the same ways, we question our value. This is where Cicero's wisdom offers a powerful remedy. Your value is not in what you do, but in who you are. Your voice matters not because of your volume, but because of your vision. To be a powerful elder, you must reclaim your story, not the one others wrote for you, but the one you've carried quietly in your heart. It begins by listening to yourself. What have you postponed for decades? What passions were buried under responsibilities? What truths have you avoided to keep the peace? This is not about rebellion. It's about remembrance. The remembrance of your own needs, your own dreams, your own dignity. Cicero wrote that one of the great gifts of old age is the freedom from ambition, the need to prove ourselves. But this freedom is not automatic. It must be claimed, and it begins with the courage to say, I am still here. I am still becoming. We live in a world that often glorifies noise, urgency, and youth. But there is a different kind of power in the elder who speaks little but says much, in the one who has lived enough to know that most things don't need to be said twice, in the one who understands that stillness can be stronger than action, and silence louder than protest. This is your invitation, not to fade, but to shine differently, to be a presence that calms rather than commands, to be a source of clarity in a confused world, and to remember that your mere existence, with all its stories and scars, is a gift that cannot be replicated. A powerful elder is not someone who controls others, but someone who has mastered themselves, who no longer needs approval to know they matter, who knows that peace is a better legacy than possessions, and who teaches not with instruction, but with example. So as we begin this journey together, let us ask a different question. Not, how do I stay relevant? But how do I become deeply myself? Not, how do I get others to respect me? But how do I live in a way that commands quiet respect without asking for it? You have not been forgotten. You are not a shadow. You are the culmination of every lesson, every choice, every moment that has brought you here. And now, at this point in life, you are invited to lead, not by stepping forward, but by standing still, by being exactly who you are, without apology. Because that, in the end, is the most powerful thing an elder can be, unapologetically themselves. There is a hidden pain that many elders carry, one not often voiced, but deeply felt. It is the pain of becoming invisible in the very lives you helped create. The child once so small, so dependent, so eager for your attention, now walks past you, distracted by their own world. Your advice is interrupted. Your stories are dismissed. And sometimes, you are left wondering, did all that I gave really matter? This isn't about bitterness, it's about clarity. And it's in this clarity that you may find a new kind of strength. Not the strength of holding on, but the strength of letting go. Cicero understood this long ago. He believed that wisdom in old age comes not from clinging, but from releasing. Not from needing more, but from appreciating what remains. The philosopher Carl Jung echoed this, saying that the second half of life is about interiority, about turning inward and reconnecting with the essence of who we are beyond our roles. When our children no longer need us the way they once did, it is not a rejection, it is a natural transition. But for many, that transition feels like erasure. We gave everything: time, sleep, dreams. We sacrificed without counting. We were the ones they called when they were sick, afraid, unsure. And now in return, we are given silence, or worse, polite distance. The instinct is to fight back, to remind them of everything we've done. But as Jung warned, what resists, persists. The more we demand recognition, the less likely we are to receive it. So what is the alternative? It is to stop waiting, to stop needing, to begin loving not in exchange for attention, but as a reflection of your inner peace. It's choosing to value yourself, even if no one else seems to notice. This is not resignation. This is liberation. When we let go of the need for constant validation, something miraculous happens. We begin to see ourselves again. We begin to ask, who was I before I was a parent? Who am I now that I no longer serve in that role daily? What do I want to do with the time I have left? Cicero called old age the crowning achievement of a life well lived. But this crown is not given. It is earned through the quiet work of self-respect. It is a crown of integrity, not applause. And the truth is, many of the people who ignore you now will one day remember you not for the meals you cooked or the bills you paid, but for the strength with which you carried yourself in the silence. This is your chance to redefine presence, no longer the ever-available caretaker, but the centered, wise presence who lives with boundaries and balance. When you stop chasing your children for recognition, you start becoming a reference point, a lighthouse, not a lifeboat. And the paradox is powerful. When you stop needing them to see you, they begin to notice. When you stop giving endlessly, without being valued, they begin to value. Because now they are no longer receiving out of habit, they are choosing to engage out of respect. But even if they don't, if they stay distant, if they never quite understand, that's not the end of your story. Cicero reminds us that a good life is not judged by others, but by the soul that lives it. You are not defined by the gratitude of others. You are defined by the peace you carry within. This is not an easy path. It requires grieving an image that no longer fits, the idea that aging parents are automatically cherished and central. It requires accepting that not all love is visible. And sometimes that silence you receive is not rejection. It is distraction, stress, immaturity. It is not always about you, so let it go. Let go of what they think, how they respond, how often they call. Instead, hold on to your dignity. Hold on to the rituals that bring you joy. Wake up and drink your coffee slowly. Read the book you never had time for. Walk at your own pace. Make your home a temple of peace. Because when you treat yourself with care, the world takes notice. And even if it doesn't, you will feel the shift. You will stand a little taller, speak a little softer, love yourself a little more. And in doing so, you become not just an elder, but a beacon. One of the greatest myths about aging is that to stay important, you must stay loud. You must insist, remind, correct, that you must fight to be seen and heard. But Cicero, ever the voice of reason, taught a different lesson. In his reflections on old age, he insisted that dignity increases not through volume, but through virtue. that the most powerful elders are not those who demand attention, but those who embody presence. It is a common experience. You offer advice to your grown children, and they shrug it off. You try to share a story, and they're glued to their phones. You raise your voice hoping to be taken seriously, only to find yourself in an argument. And slowly, frustration builds. Why don't they listen anymore? Carl Jung would say the answer lies not in their ears, but in your energy. When we speak from a place of need, needing respect, needing validation, our message is clouded. But when we act from self-respect, our presence becomes undeniable. True authority, Jung taught, is never forced. It radiates. There is a story of an old man named Elias who had 3 grown children. For years he tried to keep the family close. He organized dinners, gave advice, offered help, but each effort was met with lukewarm responses. They came, yes, but late. They listened, yes, but half-heartedly. One day, Elias stopped trying, not out of anger, but out of wisdom. He began living simply. He read, he walked, he took care of his garden. And over time, something changed. His children noticed. They began calling without being asked. They stayed longer during visits. They listened more. Not because Elias said more, but because he needed less. His silent confidence became a magnet. His life was no longer about convincing, it was about being. This is the kind of elder you are invited to become. One who teaches not by instruction, but by example. Who says more in silence than others say with speeches. Who inspires respect not because they ask for it, but because they carry it. There is a quiet power in saying, I prefer to speak when I'm being listened to. A strength in walking away from disrespect, not with bitterness, but with calm. A rare grace in choosing peace over proving a point. Cicero believed that age brings a special kind of clarity, a sharpening of values, a refinement of focus. In youth, we are distracted by performance. In old age, we are drawn to essence, and this essence is your gift. When you live from it, the world adjusts. People stop seeing you as a burden and start sensing your weight. Let others argue. Let them interrupt. Let them rush. You have earned the right to slow down, to speak softly, to mean what you say and say what you mean. Not often, not loudly, but with depth. That is leadership. This does not mean becoming cold or distant. It means becoming selective. It means realizing that not every comment needs a response, that not every behavior needs correction, that sometimes the best lesson is your calm refusal to engage in chaos. And if your children or others around you still don't notice, that's okay. You are not responsible for their awakening. You are responsible for your own peace. And when you lead yourself with dignity, others may follow or they may not. But you will have become someone you respect, and that is where all true leadership begins. Jung said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." In this stage of life, you are invited to embody everything you've ever hoped to teach. To be firm without being harsh, present without being overbearing, involved without being dependent. Your home, your voice, your time, they are sacred. Treat them as such. Let people earn access to your wisdom. And when they do come, meet them with grace. Not to prove a point, but to be a point of reference. A lighthouse. The days of chasing, pleasing, and proving are over. The time for living, being, and shining quietly has come. Cicero would remind us that old age, well lived, is not a fading. It is a rising into oneself, a return to what truly matters. So walk slowly, speak softly, and carry the kind of presence that makes people pause, not because you raised your voice, but because your spirit stood tall. For many elders, one of the most painful realizations is that their presence in the lives of their children has shifted from essential to optional. They are no longer the center of the home, but an occasional guest in it. There are fewer calls, shorter visits, briefer conversations. And sometimes you ask yourself, do I still matter? It is a question that echoes in many hearts. But Cicero, in his reflections on aging, offered a profound reframe. He wrote that old age frees us from the ambitions of youth, not because we have less to offer, but because we no longer need the same validation. In this release lies a new kind of power, the freedom to live for yourself. It may sound radical, especially after a lifetime of caring for others. For decades, you woke early, cooked meals, drove to school, paid bills, offered comfort. You were the foundation. And in that foundation, you may have lost parts of yourself, hobbies, dreams, silence. But now, in this quieter season, those parts are calling you back. Carl Jung believed that the second half of life is not about doing more, it's about becoming more whole. This wholeness requires space. It requires boundaries. It requires you to stop waiting for others to make you feel valued and start choosing your value every day. This might mean living alone, even when others say you shouldn't. It might mean declining an invitation that feels more like an obligation than a joy. It might mean saying no to a visit if you're tired, or yes to a quiet afternoon with a book instead of a noisy family gathering. These are not acts of selfishness. They are acts of self-respect. There's a beautiful story about an elderly man who chose not to live with his son despite the generous offer. He didn't refuse out of pride or resentment. He refused because he knew that his peace depended on having his own rhythm. So he found a small apartment nearby, modest but his. He drank coffee on his own schedule. He listened to music without headphones. He chose his own silence. And what happened? His relationship with his family improved, because now he wasn't showing up out of duty. He was showing up out of desire. His presence was no longer background noise. It was chosen. It was respected. This is the paradox of aging well. When you stop needing others to center you in their lives, you begin to center yourself in yours. And from that place, you become someone worth visiting. Someone who is whole, not waiting. Let go of the image that old age must mean being surrounded all the time. Let go of the fantasy that your children will be your emotional caregivers. Not because they don't love you, but because their lives are full too. They have their own storms, their own worries, and the more you release them from the burden of your happiness, the more likely they are to return, not from guilt, but from genuine affection. This is not about isolation. It is about independence. It's about creating a life that brings you joy, even if no one else sees it. Plant the garden, join the book club, take the trip, learn the thing you always postponed, because this time, you're not doing it for anyone else. You're doing it for the one who has always waited. You. Cicero warned against bitterness in old age. He said that those who age poorly are not those with ailments, but those who remain tied to expectations that no longer serve them. Let go. Not as surrender, but as empowerment. Let go of the script that said you must be needed to be loved. Let go of the belief that your worth depends on being remembered. Your life is still yours. Your time is still precious. Your joy is still possible, not through others, but through yourself. Every morning you wake up is another page. You can fill it with waiting or with wonder. The choice finally is yours, and that above all is your power. There's a quiet heartbreak many elders experience, one that rarely finds words. It is not caused by physical pain or financial hardship, but by a spiritual kind of silence, the absence of gratitude. You gave so much. You stayed up through fevers. You worked extra shifts. You said yes even when it hurt. And now, in return, you often receive nothing. No acknowledgement, no depth. Maybe a rushed text message. A Sunday lunch with a start and end time. You feel it, not in what's said, but in what's missing. And in the space left by that absence, a question begins to echo. Was it all for nothing? Cicero would gently say no. He believed that virtuous acts carry their own reward, that love given freely without transaction is the noblest kind. But this philosophy, while elegant, is hard to live, because part of you aches not for payback, but for recognition. You don't want repayment. You want to be seen, to be valued, to be remembered as more than a background figure in someone else's life. Carl Jung, with his deep understanding of the psyche, warned us about projections, how we unconsciously place our unmet needs onto others, especially those closest to us. He believed that when parents expect children to validate their identity, they create an emotional weight the children are not equipped to carry. Love turns into pressure, and pressure turns into distance. This is not to blame anyone. Your love was real. Your efforts were sacred. But part of reclaiming your power as an elder is releasing the illusion that love must return in the form you gave it. It often doesn't, and that's okay. Let yourself feel the disappointment. Don't deny it. But don't let it define you. Your worth is not measured by someone else's gratitude. It is measured by the integrity with which you gave and the grace with which you now live. The truth is, some children will never say thank you, not because they don't care, but because they don't know how. They never learned. You gave them love as if it were air, constant, reliable, unquestioned. And now they breathe it without noticing. That's not your failure. It's just how many relationships unfold. So what do you do with that pain? You transmute it. You stop waiting for the call that may never come, and you start calling yourself into wholeness. You stop placing your emotional paycheck in the hands of someone who doesn't know they're holding it. You reclaim it. You honor your life not through their words, but through your actions. You wake up and drink your tea with reverence. You listen to music that moves you. You write your story, if only for yourself. You stop asking, will they ever see what I did? And start declaring, I see what I did. And it was beautiful. This is not pride. It's healing. And it creates a powerful ripple. Because when children see their aging parents no longer waiting, no longer pleading, but simply being strong, whole, alive, they begin to wonder. They begin to reflect. And sometimes they come back, not always with words, but with presence, with warmth, with quiet respect. But even if they don't, your life is still a masterpiece. And the closing chapters, if written in dignity and truth, can outshine everything that came before. Let love remain, but let illusion go. Let the story of what should have been fade, and let the story of what still can be begin. Because you are not finished. Not yet. Not by far. And that perhaps is the greatest gratitude of all. Not what they give you, but what you give yourself. Now, freely, without waiting. There comes a moment, quiet, unmistakable, when you realize no one is coming to complete you. Not your children, not your partner, not the world. And strangely, it's not a moment of despair. It's a moment of liberation, because finally you understand, you are enough. Cicero, in his reflections on old age, saw this stage of life not as a fading, but as a flowering, a time of great inner mastery. He believed that old age gives us the gift of detachment from the superficial and a deeper connection to the soul. It is in this detachment, not indifference, that we become powerful, because we are no longer held hostage by others' approval. Carl Jung would agree. He called this process individuation, the sacred journey of returning to the self after decades of being everything for everyone else. In your younger years, you were mother, father, provider, protector. You were everything they needed. But now, those roles are no longer required. And so the deeper question arises, who am I without them? The answer is not in what you do. It's in who you are when you are still. When no one is asking anything of you. When no one is watching. That quiet self. That is your truth. And it is more than enough. It takes courage to meet this version of you. It takes grace to love what you find. But this is your invitation. To live not by duty, but by design. To wake up and ask not, what do they need from me? But what do I need from myself today? Because this time, you are not building someone else's world. You are tending to your own. This might mean doing less, but feeling more. Speaking less, but meaning more. Wanting less, but being more. That is the alchemy of old age, the transformation of outward striving into inward richness. Many elders struggle with the silence left behind by roles that have ended. But Cicero and Jung both teach us that this silence is not emptiness. It is space, sacred space, the kind of space where the soul finally speaks without interruption. And what it says is simple. You are whole. Right here. Right now. You don't need to fight to be seen. You need to see yourself. You don't need to be remembered to matter. You already matter. Not because of what you gave, but because of who you are. Alive. Present. Enough. So if they never say thank you, say it to yourself. If they never return the love, return to yourself. If they never show up for your own life, with the same devotion you once gave to everyone else. This is not the end. This is the great return. To simplicity, to sincerity, to peace, and yes, to power. Not the power of control, but the power of presence. Be the elder who walks lightly but leaves deep footprints, who speaks rarely but speaks wisely, who needs little but offers much, who no longer lives to be seen, but becomes impossible to ignore, because their light, though quiet, is unmistakable. You are not invisible. You are essential. Not because of your function, but because of your essence. You are not a relic. You are a reservoir, not outdated, just refined. Cicero called it the serenity of spirit. Jung called it self-realization. You may simply call it peace. But whatever you name it, it is yours, and no one can take it from you. So breathe deeply, stand tall, live slowly, love gently, and above all, trust this truth. You have nothing left to prove, only everything left to be.